Let's go to line number 10 and say good morning to the Vice President of Corporate Relations for Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro, Don Dalley. Good morning, Don. You're on the air.
Morning, Patty.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. So the warning is out there to conserve power in the peak demand times. I'll let you say the piece and the message to the people of the province and a couple of questions for you.
Sure, absolutely. Well, we put out the notice yesterday, and it really was a precautionary measure as we headed into this week, and we looked at the forecast yesterday morning. I guess the way to explain it is our margin got tighter, the buffer that we have in place to meet load. So we felt we could meet load this week with what we had, but we just didn't have as big a buffer as we normally have because we have one unit out of service at Bay d'Espoir awaiting a repair, and we've just got a couple of other units that have been what we call derated, so they just can't generate as much power as they normally do. So again, we felt we were able to meet the load, but without that buffer, we thought it was prudent to advise people of the situation we were in and also put out a precautionary call for conservation. So as people conserve, it actually gives us a little more of a buffer. And to be honest, we saw that this morning. When we forecast the load for this morning's peak yesterday, we expected it would be somewhere around 1,450 megawatts, and the actual peak this morning was 1,406. So, those conservation efforts worked. People, homes, businesses, looks like they chipped in this morning and really helped us with a bigger buffer on the system, and we had no issues at all.
What are we able to generate then for maximum capacity given all the mechanical issues we're facing?
So on the hydro system, which again are our assets and power that we purchase, we've got a maximum availability right now of about 1575.
Can you explain to us now, we don't need to get into the nitty-gritty of definitions between net and firm capacity in the 1946, which we have the ability to generate. Is the difference between 1575 and 1946 strictly those two Bay d'Espoir and Hollywood issues that you mentioned?
No, not at all. And to be honest, the detail of getting into that would be much more complicated than even I'd have to get the details in front of me to go through it. But no, those aren't the two issues driving that difference.
And so with the forecasted demand for the next few days while the cold snap is here, if it was 1406 this morning and you had forecasted 1450, does that change in the days to come?
It does. So the range of forecasts that we had between, so it's for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and it's when we see that cold weather pattern sticking with us and the wind chills are very high. We see anywhere between 1,450 to around 1,500, again, between yesterday morning and Thursday evening. So it depends on which peak we're looking at. And as we sort of get into the day, we're able to see much more clearer as to what the evening peaks are going to be. But the highest we expect to see would be around 1,500. And again, that's with no conservation efforts in place. So this morning we looked at it and saw what we thought would be around 1,450, and we saw just over 1,400. So, people are really chipping in, and that's helping a lot.
So when this is the chosen procedure this time around for Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro, of course stemming from the outages and the issues that we suffered in January, is this the new norm? Is this what we will hear from Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro regarding any of the worries about the buffer available with peak demands that are forecast because of cold or otherwise?
Great question, Patty. And to be honest, I think the answer is yes. What we heard in January, let me say two things. One is we would have been in situations like this probably at points during the past, and people never would have been aware of it because we would have just, did what we do in operating the system, ran through our contingencies and met load. So that's one thing. The second piece of it is as we get into a situation now where load continues to grow, and we are getting tighter on our margins, and we understood that as we forecasted forward, that we were going to be tighter as we got towards what we call hitting a deficit situation in 2015, and that's the end of 2015. So you're seeing less play on the system anyway, and we don't overbuild early, so we don't charge consumers to put capacity on the system when we don't feel we need it according to the forecast. That said, we're reviewing all that now, but we, as we got tighter, I guess you'd see more situations like this, but we'd still be able to manage it. The second piece of it is since January, we do feel we're in a new norm. We've got a lot of very engaged people who want to learn more about the electricity system. We're getting consistent questions on social media, by email, through our website, and we're providing that information and those answers. We put up daily reports, which we post on our website. We understand people are reading those. That gives the system status every day. People can go on our website now and see what's being generated at the current moment. We're looking at getting our full capacity up there so people can see that as well. So, we feel we're in a new situation, and we're moving to, answer to the call. When people want more information, we're going to provide it. But it does take some adjusting and getting used to, because people aren't used to hearing it. We're trying to educate people, make them aware that by learning all this, they just learn more about their electricity system. It doesn't necessarily mean that, things are unstable, etc., but it just means that you have more information now and you're aware of what's happening.
Can you give us some sort of idea what the demand is right now and how compared to the 1406 this morning? Because people see peak time and they know the showers and otherwise could be indeed driving peak demand. But what is it right now compared to the 1406 this morning?
I know your listeners will probably appreciate this, but I'm pulled over on the side of a road downtown. So I don't have access to the system right now, but I can tell you that when I was watching it this morning, we came up to about, very quickly, as is typical, leading up to 7 o'clock as people are getting up. And then you started to see the load actually sort of level off. If you can imagine a chart, you can see the steep climb up the mountain and then it starts to level off. Typically it does go down, so it has a little dip, after between 9 and 10 o'clock. It starts to dip off as people go to work and people are in school and, they leave their homes, etc. And then it does pick up again closer to lunchtime when you see people coming home for lunch and, again, doing the things we do in the normal course of our day. And then it drops again in the afternoon and picks up when kids come home from school and TVs start to get on, heat starts to go on, etc. So around 4 o'clock we start to see it pick up again. I imagine it was the same this morning, but I don't have the exact numbers at my fingertips now.
Is this warning or is this message, the proactive message that some people like to characterize it, is this initiated by the PUB or is this coming straight from your office?
We were discussing it yesterday morning, actually, because when we got up and we got the forecast, we started to have operational discussions, which we typically do because, we want some consideration for, how does the forecast look? What are we seeing in our load forecast and system? What is the status of all the units? When do we expect things are going to be back? So we were having those discussions, and at the same time, the Public Utilities Board actually sent us in Newfoundland Power a note and said, essentially, hey, you guys, what are you planning to do today? And so, at that point, we were solidifying on issuing a public notice anyway. But again, it's a bit of a new normal for us. So we're working those processes out internally to try and streamline them and get the information out as fast as we can.
It sounds, sounds reasonable to say that the peak demand times would be getting up, getting ready to go to work and school, and then when you return home from those duties or activities. But I just had a click, and I know you're pulled over, and I appreciate that, but it looks like the demand is a bit higher than it was even this morning at the 1406. So is there a worry in highlighting those two specific times a day when we talk about conservation of power, or is there the potential for the demand to be at 1406 this morning, but 1425 or 1495 during the afternoon, where people think, well, this is where we'll all rush to do our clothes, this is where we'll all rush to fill up the tub, or whatever the case may be?
Well, I mean, so while we were talking, I actually pulled up remotely the system. So the generation right now on our system, the hydro system, is 1,356. So it is lower than this morning where it was 13 or 1406. But I tell you, it's an interesting dynamic when you talk about how people respond to these calls. So, we ask them to push things out of those periods to keep them down. We've had some anecdotal discussions with people who've said that the opposite. They've seen the opposite happen, where when you tell people to actually turn down the heat, they actually turn it up because they feel that it's scarce. So, they want to warm their house before something happens or in case something happens. So what you typically see, the profile that I mentioned earlier about the dips in the day, you actually see it start to level off a bit, flatten, where people actually keep the heat on because they're worried about something happening. So you get less, if you get a dip, you get less of a dip than you would normally. So you are seeing there are some differences that happen in those behaviors, but the concern is really at that peak time, and we expect to still see the peaks at the times when we normally see those peaks, which is somewhere in that period. This morning's peak, for example, was at 7:37. I think around there, 7:40. And we expect to see that peak tonight. It'll probably be somewhere between 5 and 5:30.
Yeah, because people are sending me the notes. Of course, you know how this social media is impacting the way we do business. 6 a.m., 1272, 7 a.m., 1394. Then the peak, as you indicate, around 7:45. 8 o'clock, 1395, 1355 right now, as you once again mentioned.
Yeah.
John, I guess as we understand the electrical system, many people don't do much thinking beyond flick the light switch. If the lights come on, we're in good shape, I'll be charged for it, and if not, then we have a problem. So the technical issues between net, the firm capacity and otherwise. Some of these things I'm going to ask you just here on the air. If someone in the next couple of days can contact us here on the show, we'll get into some of those, not too deep into the weeds of engineering, but some of those basic understandings for my benefit and hopefully for those of the listener.
Hey, listen, I'd be happy to do it, and we'll try and find some way. I mean, I understand it's complicated when we talk about it. We'll try and simplify it so people understand it, and I think the more that we make people aware of what's happening on the system, the better it is for all of us.
I appreciate your time this morning, Don. Stay in touch.
Anytime, Patty. Take care.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Don Dalley is the Vice President of Corporate Relations at Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro. So far as the nitty-gritty and the scheduling of maintenance and whatnot, there are other voices who are probably better for all of us to hear from on that front. Don was gracious enough to call this morning, but we have a lot of questions regarding Nalcor, the reliability of the system and whatnot. He would suggest the questions you'd like to get answered. I'll get them answered for us.